Welcome back to Racing Rundown. This is the second of two previews that we have for stakes racing across the country this weekend, and this is the San Diego Handicap. A very intriguing running of this race, just because we have a large field for. I don't even know when the last time we've had this many horses in a California stakes race. Probably have to go back to the 2019 Pacific Classic to find a field that or a graded stakes race in California for the older males that drew this many horses for it. But 9 horses for this race. I don't have good things to say about many of the horses in this race, but this is a good race because it brings together a good chunk of horses, and it's a competitive race, relatively evenly matched. And we'll get into all of them, and we'll start off with the number 1 horse in this race, and that is There Goes Harvard. Newly minted Grade 1 winner, Hollywood Gold Cup winner, and a horse that I'm definitely against in this race. And my theme for this race is I'm against every horse exiting the Hollywood Gold Cup. And I know it was a okay effort for There Goes Harvard and the Hollywood Gold Cup, but that was a 5 horse field, and none of the horses in that race were Grade 1 caliber. And actually, 4 of the 5 horses from that Hollywood Gold Cup are back in this race, and I'm against all of them in this race. Before the Hollywood Gold Cup, There Goes Harvard won a couple allowance races at Santa Anita. He was an interesting price play in there. I actually know a couple folks who did have him in that race just because of the price disparity between him and some of the other horses in the race. But There Goes Harvard was the beneficiary of running against probably the worst field that the Hollywood Gold Cup has ever seen in its history of runnings. And There Goes Harvard is just that. He's an allowance horse that lucked into a Grade 1 because he was running against 4 other allowance horses in a Grade 1, and it fell into his lap. And like I said, very against him in this race. I don't think he's taken a step forward or anything. That was just purely a winner by circumstance last time. And now we're going to move on and talk about the second horse in this race, and that is Defunded, who was Grade 1 placed last time by circumstance, much like his fellow running mate from that race. They're not in the same barn, but you get what I'm saying there. There Goes Harvard in there. And Defunded has even worse form than There Goes Harvard did. Now, There Goes Harvard had a couple of good wins going into the race. Defunded had some really bad form last year. Beaten in the Affirm Stakes, beaten in the Los Alamitos Derby. He was beaten by Classier in that Los Alamitos Derby, who isn't really any good. He did have an allowance victory at Del Mar, and then didn't have a start until another allowance win in May, back when he was in the barn of Sean McCarthy, and then he was second in the Hollywood Gold Cup. Once again, very much the beneficiary of running against one of the worst fields in that race's the worst field in that race's history. Again, I'm not holding back on the horses from the Hollywood Gold Cup. I'm very against all of them. Defunded has never been a graded stakes caliber horse. He has picked up a couple graded stakes placings because he caught very light, very short fields, but he's never been good in his career. There was some optimism about him back in the Santa Anita Derby last year. Didn't live up to that, and he is another horse that I think you have to be against in here. I don't think he's going to get played a whole lot. Obviously, his stablemate Country Grammar is going to take the majority of the money from the Baffert angle, but I just can't say how much more against the horses from the Hollywood Gold Cup that I am in this race. And now we're going to move on to a horse that finally wasn't a runner in the Hollywood Gold Cup, but that's another horse that I am against, and that is Kentucky Derby winner by disqualification, Mandaloun, last year. Mandaloun has been very iffy in terms of form this year. Very good effort in the Louisiana Derby, where he beat off the late Midnight Bourbon there. Very bad run in the Saudi Cup, and then a moderate run in the Stephen Foster. It wasn't a good effort. It wasn't a bad effort. But that Stephen Foster was a race that really made me say, okay, I kind of need to be against Mandaloun here. Mandaloun's been a hanger throughout his career. Obviously, he was a winner of the Haskell by circumstances qualification there. I thought he really took a step forward in Louisiana this year, but his effort in Riyadh was really bad. And while I'm very, very apt to forgive horses for poor efforts at that race course, he didn't really give a good account of himself at Churchill Downs. Now, the pace of that race did kind of fall apart, but at the same time, I've never really been the biggest Mandaloun fan. I did pick him in the Saudi Cup, and I did think that he had turned a corner going into Riyadh, but he hasn't really given me an indication that corner really has been turned. And I'm going to play against him in this spot just merely because of that. The one thing that you can say about him is this is his second time back from the Middle East. That was a significant break, 4.5 months. from the Saudi Cup into the Stephen Foster, and then also the pace did kind of fall apart there. But I am fading Mandaloun just because I don't really like the form of him all that much, especially since coming back from Riyadh. And now we're going to move on to the third horse from the Hollywood Gold Cup. See a pattern here? Stilleto Boy. Don't like him at all. Stilleto Boy he wasn't the favorite in the Hollywood Gold Cup, interestingly enough, but Stilleto Boy has been a very intriguing hit the board type in several races. He's been third in 6 races and second in 3 races. And he had a very long stretch of very credible board hitting efforts. Going back to last year, his big victory is he won the Iowa Derby. But then grade 1 placed in the Awesome again, grade 1 placed in the Malibu, grade 1 placed in the Pegasus, grade 1 placed in the Big Cap. Then he finally won the Californian, and it was logical to think that he had turned a corner going into the Hollywood Gold Cup. And I don't fault anyone who picked him in there. I didn't pick him because I never really bought into him, but I don't blame people who bought into him. But he just ran awful in the Hollywood Gold Cup. I don't really know what happened there. 1.25 miles was never really something that he showed was going to be an issue for him. Yeah, he was well beaten in the Pacific Classic, but he was well beaten by the 4 best horses in the race. And there wasn't anybody of Breeders' Cup Classic last year level in that Hollywood Gold Cup. And it was just a really bad effort for Stilleto Boy there. So he could pick up another graded stakes placing because he does like to hit the board in races, and he did technically still hit the board in the Hollywood Gold Cup, although that was a very fluky by circumstance hitting the board there. It was an awful effort for him. Once again, major against him just because I'm major against everybody from the Hollywood Gold Cup. Broken record. Fortunately, there's only one more horse that I have to repeat that about. And now we're going to move on to a horse that is a very interesting type for this race just because he is such a mystery, and that's Senor Buscador, the 2020 Springboard Mile winner. And from that Springboard Mile, he went into the Risen Star Stakes at the fairgrounds. And there was a lot of people that were backing him there because his effort in the Springboard Mile was a very good effort. And contrary to most Springboard Miles, the form from that race has actually come back to be pretty okay. Cowan's been a multiple stakes winner. Outador's also been a multiple stakes winner. Now, those horses are turf horses, but they were good horses running underneath him in that spot. So not terrible form from that Springboard Mile. And the form from the Risen Star was really good. Midnight Bourbon, obviously Mandaloun, Proxy, and Obesos, 4 horses that were graded stakes caliber and did all run credible efforts. Subsequently, 3 of them credible efforts in the Kentucky Derby. So it was an okay effort. I didn't like him going into the race personally, and I was never going to pick him in a subsequent race if he had continued on the Kentucky Derby trail, but he gave an okay account of himself there. Then he dropped off the face of the earth for a year and a half, and he popped back up in an allowance at Lone Star, and he won that race, and that allowance race was on July 3rd. He won that race by 2 lengths in the race, so it was a good effort for him there, and he's an intriguing type because he's never really been given the opportunity to prove himself. His one graded stakes effort was against a field that even, again, I said some bad things about Mandaloun, but Mandaloun has won his fair share of stakes races before. And the field from that Risen Star has come back to produce a lot of good things. So if you're feeling risky, I'm personally not feeling risky, but if you're feeling risky and you're willing to take a chance, this horse is worth a shot because he has proven at least to be stakes caliber with his run in the Springboard Mile. You kind of feel like you're grasping at straws to pick him in this spot, but it honestly isn't the worst thing in the world when you have a bunch of horses that are either coming off of massive layoffs or very off form or just aren't good coming into this spot. So he's not the worst shot in here, but he's not for me. And now we're going to move on to the number 6 horse in this race, and that's Parnelli, a horse who, if you're a longtime listener of Racing Rundown, you know that I have picked this horse on several occasions. And that is because I've been trying to will Parnelli to upset a major graded stakes race at some point in his career. And, Parnelli has at some points had okay form in his career, and at other points has had very bad form. And Parnelli is at a point where he's got some okay form, but at the same time, Parnelli's not really a horse that's ever proven that he can run at the stakes level. going back to the Kentucky Derby Trail last year, because I picked him in 1 or 2 races on the Kentucky Derby Trail last year. 6th in the Santa Anita Derby, 5th in the Bob Lewis, 3rd, but well beaten in the Sham behind Life is Good and Medina Spirit. He did have a good maiden victory at Del Mar, and he was also in the, I believe he was also in the Life is Good Crush Fest maiden race. And I should correct myself. He was in a race that Spielberg won at Del Mar, so he was not there. I'm misremembering that. But Parnelli, he's going to be a price in here. And if Parnelli was trained by John Sadler, longtime listeners will also know, and I'll get to it when I talk about Tripoli, I would potentially throw him out there. But because I've tried this before, he is in good form right now, but that was in allowance races, and he's stepping back up to stakes company. He's never proven himself to be a stakes caliber horse, and as much as it's tempting to try to run it back a 3rd time with Parnelli, I'm not going to do it because I know what happened the last 2 times I tried to do that. And now we're going to move on to the number 7 horse in this race, and that is Tripoli, a horse that I had a lot of success with last year. And listeners will know, longtime listeners of Racing Rundown will know, a formula that I have for horses that I like to pick at Del Mar. And I referenced this a little bit last week when we talked about the Cougar Stakes on Racing Rundown, and that is the Sadler Special. And Tripoli is the most recent addition to the Sadler Special roster from last year. And that is John Sadler takes a horse that is running iffy races and allowance company, okay, to good efforts, and then takes him, gets him ready for a grade 1, takes out that grade 1, and then the horse never runs back to that grade 1 form again. And Tripoli was the perfect formula for that last year. Runner-up at from the San Diego when I picked him there. Perfect win in the Pacific Classic. Perfect Sadler Special form win in the Pacific Classic. Got that win there, and then has not run to form since then. 4th in the Awesome again, while well beaten in the Breeders' Cup Classic, and then off the break, he ran on turf last time in the American Stakes. So I don't like Tripoli here because part of the Sadler Special formula is the horse never runs to form again. And as of now, I don't have an indication that he's going to run to form, so I'm going to be against Tripoli in this spot for that reason. We're going to move on now to the likely favorite for this race. Now, I'm recording this race before the morning line comes out, so I don't know what the morning line is going to be for this race, but I imagine Country Grammar has to be favored in this, and Country Grammar is the best horse in this race. He's proven himself at the graded stakes level on multiple occasions. Won the Peter Pan as a 3-year-old, won the Hollywood Gold Cup as a 4-year-old, won the Dubai World Cup last time out, and Dubai World Cup has been one of the best races to Racing Rundown. Obviously, if you are a subscriber, you caught the preview that we had of that race, and I absolutely nailed every aspect of the Dubai World Cup, including Country Grammar's victory in there. Little bit worried about the layoff because form, especially of Bob Baffert horses coming back from Dubai, can be very risky, but Country Grammar almost won the Saudi Cup off of a 9-month layoff, and with his good effort there, 9-month layoff, he's getting a class break coming into this spot. I think that it should be no problem for him. I'm going to pick Country Grammar in this spot just because I don't really like anybody else in this spot overly, and he has proven that the layoff is no problem for him. So I'm going to trust that that's going to continue to be the case. And now we're going to move on to the final horse in this spot, and that is, I think, arguably the most disappointing horse from that Hollywood Gold Cup. And it's very difficult to judge who is the most disappointing because they were all really disappointing. But Royal Ship is a horse that has had, it feels like every single time this is going to be the race where he's going to break through at the graded stakes level. Now, he did win the Californian Stakes, but it felt like the Hollywood Gold Cup in 2021 was his race. And then, the next 2 starts, San Diego, okay, this will be his race. Pacific Classic, this will be his race. Hollywood Gold Cup this year. The field's so weak, he can't possibly lose this race. And that was my rationale with picking him. This field is so bad, he can't possibly lose. And he lost. And he lost at even money, a price that if I had known he was going to be even money, I would have never taken him at. But Royal Ship has just been disappointment after disappointment after disappointment after disappointment. Californian Stakes aside, and that was a very weird effort, especially beating Country Grammar there. But Country Grammar was off the layoff in that spot, and I think he definitely needed the start in him, and Country Grammar's a superior horse to Royal Ship. And as I said, Royal Ship just disappointment after disappointment after bad effort after just every single superlative you can come up for Royal Ship. So to finish this off, fade every horse from the Hollywood Gold Cup. Do not bet any horse from the Hollywood Gold Cup with found money. And with that being said, if you're going to heed my advice, Where does that leave you? And I'll get into my picks for this race now. Obviously, as I said, going with Country Grammar on top. And that leaves me with very little options elsewhere. Now, is it difficult to say that they're all going to miss the board? Yeah, it is. Someone's probably going to hit the board from that race, but I'm going to get a little bit creative with this triple that I'm going to put together for this race. So obviously, Country Grammar on top. I will include Mandaloun in there, but I'll include him third. And just for some fun, we'll try out Senor Buscador to be second in this spot. So that my triple in this race is going to go Country Grammar into Senor Buscador into Mandaloun. That'll be 8-5-3 for the reference of numbers in there. Big thing is here, don't pick anybody to win from the Hollywood Gold Cup. I think every single horse there is really bad. I've said that to death in there. You know how I feel about that. We'll see what happens here, but Country Grammar's my win pick in this spot. Be sure to check out Racing Rundown's preview of the Jim Danny Stakes. A link to that will be below in the description, and we'll see you next time. Have a good one.